So we all know what the public discourse is currently around multiple video games. Some of it's positive, some of it's negative, but overall, it's always an interesting discussion. But there is one that is above every single other video game, well, except maybe Assassin's Creed Shadows, but there is one video game that everybody is coping extremely hard over, and that is quite simply Ghost of Yotei. Now, Ghost of Yotei is a video game that is a sequel to a mega hit called Ghost of Tsushima, a video game that I personally played and thoroughly enjoyed and had a fantastic time with, to the point where I bought it twice. I got it on PlayStation and I ended up getting it on PC. I don't even do that very often, but a video game like that, had a great time with it, thoroughly enjoyed it. Ghost of Yotei is on a whole nother level though. This particular video game decided to switch up on their fans, and Sucker Punch decided it was in their best interest to go with a completely different character after falling in love with the character Jins. Now everybody's coping and seething, trying to pretend as if the story ended and there was no way to continue Jins Sakai's story, and we will talk about how that's complete BS later on in the video. But what I want to talk about in this video is the massive cope surrounding the numbers about Ghost of Yotei and how these people will continue to misrepresent and be disingenuous and overall pretty much lie about the entire scenario on social media and blame you for what you're seeing. So hit that subscribe button, like button, all that good stuff that the YouTube algorithm loves, and I hope you guys are enjoying the brand new videos. Let's talk about the Ghost of Yotei situation. We're going to break this video down into multiple segments, so make sure to check the timestamps down below in the description or even in the pinned comment so that you guys know exactly where to follow. This particular story starts with the people who shill for video games on social media. We're going to bring up some examples. I have no issues with these people. They probably have issues with me, and that's fine. What else is new? But I have zero issues with any of them. I just simply want to showcase exactly how they like to frame things and why ultimately I just don't believe the nonsense, quite frankly. We're going to start off with this person called Rhino the Bouncer, who says outside of Grifter fantasies, these two games turned out to be successful. Another evidence that internet outrage isn't real life. And then he references Ghost of Yotei and Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I'm personally going to do a separate video on Assassin's Creed Shadows because Ubisoft just finally released some information from their earnings call, and there's plenty to talk about there in another video. So let's talk about this particular comment. Outside of Grifter fantasies, I have no idea what this person's issues are or what their politics are, and I frankly don't care. What I do know is that most of the people online, probably 99% of the people online who use the word grifter, are from a particular ideological camp, whether they want to admit it or not. They could pretend to be centrist, they could not pretend. It really doesn't matter. Once you use words like that and you're using it in a way that is clearly not their actual real way to use it, I'm already going to put you in the box of, okay, you're one of those. Well, let's break this down. I like how this person likes to call people grifters, you know, and I'm assuming he's talking about anybody who talked about Ghost of Yotei negatively. But the funny thing about these people is that they forget their own camp. They actually don't pay attention to their own camp. What do I mean by that? Well, let's actually go through this and check this out. But before we do that, I have one more comment I want to go through that's actually pretty similar. Now, I have no idea who this person is. Jay Plays Games, but it says, "What now, grifters? Are you going to shut up and buy the game? Sucker Punch head on current Ghost of Yotei controversy. Drew is no longer an employee here. I think we're aligned as a studio that celebrating or making light of someone's murder is a deal breaker for us, and we condemn that, kind of in no uncertain terms. That's sort of our studio, and that's kind of where we are. Big thanks to XYZ person for bringing this to my attention." This is in reference to when Sucker Punch actually fired the developer that was on their team that was celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And that whole situation ended up with this person saying, well, now that the person is fired, you grifters who are angry only because the person said XYZ, are you now going to shut up and play the game? Again, this particular post and this particular post is essentially trying to showcase that it's only one particular side that was angry at Ghost of Yotei for whatever reason that may be. But here's a fun fact that a lot of these people tend to forget. Master the TDS was perfect for showcasing this particular tweet, and I want to go over it because I want to remind these supposed anti-grifters that it looks like they're grifting a little bit. Master the TDS says the following: Blue Sky is losing it. People now want to boycott Ghost of Yotei because Sucker Punch fired Drew Harrison for her vile Charlie Kirk post. Some are calling it fascist support and a right-wing cancel campaign. One even joked about a Kirk death karaoke party. Big yikes. I don't know if these two people, Rhino and Jay Plays Games, tend to have forgotten, but there was a bunch of people. I didn't forget. That's why I knew to look up Master the TDS post. There was a bunch of people that were over on Blue Sky. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but everybody who uses Blue Sky, probably 98% of the people there are left-wing lunatics. Let's just be honest, right? Like, Blue Sky is known and has a reputation for being a safe haven and a cluster of absolute psychopaths, and most of them are in the gaming industry. Almost nobody outside of the gaming industry utilizes Blue Sky. Blue Sky is literally the Twitter equivalent for only the psychopaths in the gaming industry. I'm going to read you a couple of posts from these people, and I want you to keep in mind, we are called grifters, meanwhile, for, complaining about Yotei or supposedly boycotting Yotei. Again, I don't know where that came from, but this is where they're saying this. I want to remind them that people in their own camp were calling for a boycott against Ghost of Yotei. We have somebody called Ethers Alexa says, time to boycott Ghost of Yotei and Sony until they reinstate the artist. Why are you capitulating to the far right? Your game star is someone Charlie Kirk would have wanted to die. You got this person called Devour. Absolutely disgusting behavior to crumple to a harassment campaign so easily and fully. Management at Sucker Punch should be ashamed. Should the employee have been disciplined? Maybe. But firing them over a small joke that isn't even at Kirk's expense is ridiculous. Boycott Ghost of Yotei calls Mix nobody. Fuck Sucker Punch. Fuck their CEOs and upper echelon for capitulating to fucking fascists. Parent Bar over here says, I'm going to be crystal clear. This is cowardly. Handing power to fire for the internet at large, you are abetting the kinds of actions that hurt so many of my fellow developers. Have a process and follow it, but don't take cues from people looking for a head. Again, all these people were asking for Ghost of Yotei to be boycotted because of what happened with that particular developer and their firing. But you'll have people like Rhino and people like Jay's Plays Games seemingly only wanted to call out one particular side for whatever that reason may be. Why that is, I don't know. It's almost as if they're probably afraid to call out the side that they tend to probably advocate for. It's a very weird thing. But let's continue. So Master the TDS, thank you so much for reminding me of that. I also want to focus on some of the comments surrounding Ghost of Yotei. And keep in mind, we're going to break down the numbers. So if you want to see when that starts, look at the timestamps down below and I will make sure to pinpoint exactly when that begins. We have a post here from somebody called DQ Roman, and it says Ghost of Yotei quadrupled its development costs in 1 month, and these middle-aged men still have to find ways to prey on the negativity algorithm so they could pay their rent. What a miserable little man. Now, I'm assuming they're quote tweeting, yeah, I figured, Smash JT, of course, because they all have Smash JT syndrome. This particular person doesn't even realize what they even said, right? Because quadrupling your development costs means you would quadruple your development costs. I understood what he meant, but he didn't even know what he said. And it's so funny because he's trying to pretend to be the smartest one in the room. Meanwhile, he made it seem as if the cost for the game just quadrupled, but what he really meant to say is that they made the money to quadruple their own development costs in terms of money back. That's really what he meant. So let's scroll down and see what we got over here. Not to mention, dude puts another man's face on almost every thumbnail. Bit odd. Again, these are like weird arguments. Like, what does that even mean? Sincerely, what are you talking about? Putting another man's face is weird in a thumbnail. So what, every thumbnail should be female if you're a male creator? You guys don't even know what you're fighting about. You guys don't even know who you're fighting. The sad thing is that this whole situation, sincerely, is an absolute joke because they end up shadowboxing on Twitter the perception of what they believe is their enemy, and they spend their whole day on Twitter trying to fight people over it. It honestly is ridiculous. So now we got the golden joysticks, which I don't know if you guys are aware, Ghost of Yotei ended up taking in the Console Game of the Year award because Expedition 33 got Ultimate Game of the Year. Nobody cares about the golden joysticks, but it's funny because the reason why this happened is so that Sony is able to legally market a Game of the Year edition for Ghost of Yotei. We all know that's coming, and this is why this entire thing is planned the way that it is. Now, if we continue, we're going to go to the numbers. So this is where we're going to start discussing the numbers for Ghost of Yotei and why I know it's absolute BS, okay? And when I say BS, it doesn't mean the numbers are fake. It means the numbers are misrepresented, and they're misrepresented purposefully by people who are reporting on the numbers, like Colin Moriarty, for example. And again, he's more than, he could do this. If he wants to do this, that's perfectly fine. It's his prerogative. I understand that he tends to lean towards PlayStation, and that's perfectly fine. Do what you want to do. I really don't care. But the numbers are being misrepresented, and they're being spoken about in a disingenuous way. And it's not just him. Again, I want to reiterate, it is not just Colin that is doing this. It's a lot of people that are over on X that are doing this. So Colin writes the following: with 31 days of sales counted, Ghost of Yotei now slots in as the 10th best-selling game of the year in the United States. I can only imagine the devastating meetings that are happening behind closed doors at Sony as they strategize to manage such an unprecedented sales flop. Now, again, guys, I want to be very clear. He definitely states that it's only in the United States, which I thank him for being clear, at least in that notion. But the problem that I have with these people is that they always use Circana's list, but they never tell people what Circana's list mean. That's like me using the Steam's top seller list, but I don't explain to people that Steam's top seller list is based on revenue and not copies sold. He knows that he could just point the finger and say, well, in the picture it says it, so why would I say it? But he knows that because he's not going to say it, knowing that other people are not going to read the picture at the top. They're only going to look at the ranking and be like, oh, it's top 10. This is amazing. Yay. And that's all they're going to go with. They're not actually going to read anything. He knows that, which is why he's not putting it up here. And he's just could be able to point to the picture and say, well, it's there. If you're not reading it, that's on you. Now, guys, in this number that is specifically for the United States, I just want you to understand something. This number does not include a lot of Nintendo digital information, or if any Nintendo digital information for that matter. You can look here specifically on Minecraft where it says that it does not include digital sales for the Nintendo platforms, and some of them don't include digital sales for Nintendo and Xbox platforms, depending on the video game. So this is the example of a video game that is top 10, but it's top 10 in revenue. It is not top 10 in copies sold. They know this, I know this, but they don't want you to know this. This list is based on revenue, which is inherently going to favor AAA, or it's inherently going to favor games that are costing more, that happen to sell 1 million, 2 million, 3 million copies. It's going to favor those games because it's a lot easier to rank on a list like this if your competition is cheaper or not selling anywhere near as many copies. Now, when we look at games like this that have been clearly outperformed by other video games, for example, Ghost of Yotei, they're trying to say, is the best-selling game of the year in the United States. Top 10 best-selling game of the year. But best-selling, what do you mean? Best-selling as in copy sold, or best-selling in terms of revenue? When you say best-selling, you are utilizing those words because you know that people are going to think to themselves that it's copy sold and that it's not revenue. Because again, people are retarded. They don't read this stuff, so they don't realize it's based off revenue. You guys never want to talk about copy sold because you know it's not going to go anywhere. You know it's not going to go anywhere that's favorable for you. If you talk about copy sold, then you're going to realize that it's selling less copies than its previous iteration, and you don't want to talk about that. Not only that, I'll give you a perfect example of why this is complete BS, okay? And why basing it off of revenue is so disingenuous, and they know that, but they do it anyway. Here, Ghost of Yotei is number 10 on this list, okay? Elden Ring Night Rain, as much as I don't personally like Elden Ring Night Rain, I'm still going to acknowledge that it's sold extremely well, is number 11. So right below Ghost of Yotei, that means they want you to believe that Ghost of Yotei is the better selling game than Elden Ring Night Rain. But the truth is that's not true, right? You can clearly and very easily go to the numbers and realize that that's not the case. We all know that Ghost of Yotei has sold 3.3 million copies according to Sony. That's the numbers, right? Elden Ring Night Rain has sold over 5 million copies. You can't even cope and seethe because you say, oh, well, this is the United States. No. Ghost of Yotei sold 3.3 million copies worldwide. That was their to-date numbers when they reported it. That was everything. So it's unfair for you to use worldwide numbers for Ghost of Yotei, but you're not going to allow worldwide numbers for other video games? That doesn't make any sense. And the truth is that if you do include worldwide numbers for other video games, Ghost of Yotei gets completely felted and thrown off the list. Which is why you guys don't like including Nintendo numbers. Or maybe Nintendo doesn't like giving the numbers to Circana because they know they're going to misrepresent it. Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. Elden Ring Night Rain has sold over 5 million copies globally as of July, and probably sold even more than that. And the funny thing is, Ghost of Yotei is at 3.3. So is Ghost of Yotei really the better selling game? No. Ghost of Yotei just simply made more revenue. You're probably asking, well, Hypnotic, why that is? Why is that? If Elden Ring Night Rain sold 5 million copies, how is it below Ghost of Yotei that sold a magical 3.3 million copies according to Sony? Well, let's go over to SteamDB. SteamDB clearly shows us that the MSRP for Elden Ring Night Rain was $39.99. That was the MSRP of Elden Ring Night Rain, whereas with Ghost of Yotei, it was $70. So very clearly, you can easily see if you have a brain that Ghost of Yotei did not sell better than Elden Ring Night Rain. Elden Ring Night Rain is, in fact, the better selling game, but because it's a cheaper video game, it did not make as much revenue. Plain and simple. You can argue with that all you want, but this is what I mean by misrepresenting the numbers. They know this. You know this now. I know this. But this is why they go on Twitter and they do this whole, I don't even know what he's doing, to be honest with you. I don't know. I guess he's fighting Smash JT. I really have no idea. So, and again, for the people that think, well, oh, but that's worldwide, that doesn't count. No, it does count, because again, Colin ended up saying, I can't hear you, when Ghost of Yotei announced 3.3 million copies to date worldwide, with no specification about US only or anything like that. I'll give you another example of whether you want to hear it or not. This list for Circana doesn't even have most Nintendo games on it. Doesn't even have Mario Kart or anything like that. When you look at the numbers for Mario Kart, as of November 2025, very recently, sold over 9.5 million copies worldwide. But you'll have this particular list that they'll try to pretend as if it's the most amazing thing in the world, and it's the top 10 in the United States, because they know that people are not going to focus on the United States. People are just going to focus top 10 selling game. That's what they're going to focus on. Again, it's purposeful, disingenuous reporting on the numbers, and they know that people are not going to look into it, and they'll try to claim, well, it's not my fault, people that look into it. And you know what? You're right. You're right. It absolutely is not your fault. But you also know what you're doing too when it comes to the numbers. Now, the funny thing is, Jay Viper posted this saying people are done buying Ghost of Yotei as it slips to the 15th bestseller on PS5. This is pretty bad, to be honest with you. To be below Minecraft, College Football 26, even Grand Theft Auto 5 is doing better than Ghost of Yotei right now, which is insane, by the way. I don't know why people continue to buy Grand Theft Auto 5, but they just do. I have no idea. Even Where Winds Meet. But Where Winds Meet is a free-to-play game, so they count downloads at sales, so that's really not fair. Dispatch is doing better. Disney Dreamlight Valley is doing better on PS5. It's hilarious, man. This thing is an absolute joke. So again, guys, I don't have any personal stake when it comes to Ghost of Yotei. I really don't care. I really, truly don't care, because I have zero plans to play this game, even when it comes out to PC, and that's my own personal choice. Other people, as I've said in other videos, have every right to want to play this game. You want to play it, go ahead. Have fun. By all means, go for it. But don't sit here and pretend as if it's doing better than Tsushima, and don't sit here and pretend as if it costs the same as Tsushima when everything else in the world is going up, and all these tariffs and all this bullshit. Everything else in the world is going up, but you guys want to convince everybody that it has the literal same exact budget as Tsushima? Sure, the only way that's even remotely possible is the fact that this game is basically a copy and paste. So they had a lot of reused assets, and they were able to easily transfer it over to Yotei and just add in a couple differentiations here and there, and not have to spend as much money as they did building Tsushima from the ground up. But even with all that being said, highly doubt that the budget is anywhere close, because they said, well, it's close, it's somewhat close to the original budget, but they don't actually give you a number, because transparency is like these people's bane of existence. They don't want to be transparent at all. Now, there is one particular post that I want to kind of check out, and this one is from Smash JT, because this bar graph is actually very interesting, and I think ChatGPT ended up making this, ironically. He says, I asked ChatGPT to visualize, based on available info, a table of sales for games released in 2025. Sony Pony screaming Ghost of Yotei is a success. For Sony, no, Sony is not happy. They aren't retarded. They know they left millions on the table, veering away from Jins. Now, when we look at these numbers, you can clearly see that he's doing a copies sold list, and this is the reality when you go based off copies sold and not revenue. This is why they choose revenue, because revenue will make these video games look better. These are AAA video games. They're very expensive. A revenue list will absolutely make them look better versus a copy sold list where you can clearly see it's not good, right? The number one video game is Battlefield 6 with about a little over 12 million copies sold. NBA 2K26, Mario Kart World, which again we spoke about, sold about almost 10 million copies as of November, probably a little more than that. Monster Hunter Wild sold a ridiculous amount of copies. Oblivion Remastered sold a lot of copies. Even Borderlands 4, as much as people felt that game sold a good amount of copies. Pokemon Legends, EA Sports College Football, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Madden NFL 26, MLB The Show, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and all the way here at the bottom with an estimated 3.3 million sales is Ghost of Yotei, in comparison to all the other games that released throughout the year based on copies sold and not revenue. So it's a drastic difference. This list clearly showcases a completely different story. And when we do a list like this, they get mad, right? Because they're like, well, that's misrepresented numbers. Is it? Because I feel like your list is misrepresented in numbers. It's funny how we have a lot in common once we get through the bullshit and realize that, hey, you might be misrepresenting things. We're just showcasing copies sold, and you think it's misrepresentation because you don't like when people talk about copies sold. And guess what? Neither do the companies, which is why they barely report it unless they have a massive hit, and then they're not scared to report it, or they're a public company and they have to report it on their financials. One way or the other, it doesn't matter. Now, for the people that are coping, oh, Jin Sakai's story, it's over. You know, it's over. It's over. Did you guys actually play Ghost of Tsushima? I'm just a little confused because I specifically remember at the end of Ghost of Tsushima, they specifically tell you that the Mongol threat is still out there, that they're on the island, and that Kodan Khan's army is not the, you know, it's not the only army. Like, it was probably one of the biggest armies, sure, but it's not the only army. So this was this was going to be something that was going to be going for a long time. They even tell you the war is not over. The war on Tsushima is not over. Just because Kodan Khan was defeated, that you think the story's done. The story's not done. You could have did so much more with the story, which is why I don't understand why the people who are trying to cope and they're like, oh, we need to accept Yotei. So to accept Yotei, we have to abandon Jin. That's not how this goes. Jin had a lot of story that was left to tell, and you could clearly see that that was there, but they chose to go another direction and make it an anthology series. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, again, this will probably be the final video I make on Ghost of Yotei, because at this point, I think both sides really don't want to have a conversation about this thing. I don't think the other side wants to actually look at the numbers in any meaningful way. I think they just flat out want to represent the numbers in whatever way that makes them look good or feel like they're owning the chuds. You know, even though they're forgetting that people on their own side were calling for a boycott on this game. Ironically, they completely forget that, or they choose to not even bring it up because it makes it look bad. They want it all to fall on the chuds. They want it all to fall on the grifters, the people that they shadowbox every day on Twitter for their entire career. That's what they wanted to fall on, and now they're trying to claim victory over some shadow enemy. It's honestly, bro, it's the weirdest thing. It really, really is. But you know what? It's perfectly fine. We're gonna move on from Ghost of Yotei, and we're gonna be talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows in the next video, so you're not gonna want to miss that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for liking, commenting, doing all that good stuff that the algorithm likes, and I will see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.